Hi, my name is Deanna, and I'm an occupational therapist at Springboard Pediatric Therapy. We are a outpatient pediatric therapy clinic that offers occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy, located in Whippany, New Jersey. Before I get started today, I always like to give a little bit of a disclaimer that all the tips and tricks that we'll give you today are not a substitute for therapy. So if you feel like you need more support or if you try some of these activities and they might not work the way you were expecting, you can always reach out to us either for a consultation or for support for your child, or work with a professional in your area that can support you. So today's topic for Noon Nuggets is Parent Power-Ups Back to School Edition, Transitioning Homes Tips and Tricks. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how we can customize the afternoon when we get home. What are visual schedules and how can we use them to help transition home? We talked a little bit about this last week. Downtime, some homework tips, focusing on the good, and after school chats. So the big thing about afternoon routines is recognizing our own self and our own desires, and then recognizing that our children are different people with different desires, needs, and wants. As adults, it has taken us a long time to figure out what makes our evening or afternoon feel stress-free. And we often put that onto our kids. This is the routine that works for me, whether that is coming home and having 10 minutes of scrolling through your phone. Some people they go to the gym after work. Some people it's taking a shower. Then you want to have dinner, then time to connect with your kids, because you need to decompress before kind of being able to show up the best for them. So you want that to be the routine. Now your kids, that might not be a routine that works for them. The best way is what works for them, what works for you, and how can you blend it? And we'll talk a little bit about that. Getting some information and kind of data for ourselves about what does each child need. You know them best, but also you could try something, try it for a week or two, and think of the parts that are going well and think of the parts that are a little bit harder, so that way maybe switching the order. Some kids do really well coming home, downtime, then homework, then eating. Some kids need a snack right away or they're hungry. Some kids need to get the homework out of the way because they'll have anxiety. Some kids do homework better in the morning, or morning people versus after school. It's all different. So keeping in mind what your child's needs are. Other kids, if you had them do it in the morning, they would never get their homework done. So keeping track of what's working, what's not. Involving your kids. What do they like? These are the things we have to fit into the afternoon. How do you think we can fit it? Let's try this. Is there anything you think we can change? Considering the child's age, temperament, and after-school activities, when is a good time to have them involved in a lot of sports? If they're younger, having less organized activities, maybe one a week, maybe two. Some kids thrive on having additional scheduled activities. And then flexibility is key for a successful afternoon. Knowing what can be moved and what can't. What is a desire for us to go in a certain way versus what is stuck. And how can we, again, have that blend. What works well for us as the adult, what works well for our kids. Now, if we're always doing exactly only what works well for our kids, we might feel stressed as the adult. And then sometimes that can bleed into feeling stressed in that interaction. So it's kind of that blending. How can we support that? Again, our afternoon routines are allowed to be customizable. I always like taking notes. What worked well today? What didn't work? And see if there's a pattern. One hard afternoon does not mean that your afternoon plan is not working. Sometimes Mondays consistently afternoons are hard, or Fridays. It's the end of the week. If we're seeing a pattern, we might need some adjustment. Maybe we need more downtime on Mondays or Fridays. You want to keep that in mind when planning afternoons routines. already talked about this a little bit, but the 3 key things in afternoon routines are snack, because we can be hungry, having a little downtime, and homework, and kind of figuring out what order that works well in is important. Just know that there's no right or wrong. So we talked a little bit about visual schedules in our last presentation, but today we're going to kind of deep dive. Visual schedules can be used for all ages. They can be pictures or drawing for young children, or they can be lists for older kids. It can be on a phone for older kids, written out. You can do the writing. It's not meant to be stressful to add a visual schedule. What we really like about visual schedules is it promotes independence. It also can decrease anxiety. Kids and time is something that's growing because our executive functioning skills are growing. So when things change, figuring out when they still get the things they are really looking forward to can be harder. Or when we have to do something that we don't like so much. So maybe we have homework, or we have to go to siblings tennis practice. Knowing where their stuff fits in can be helpful. The other nice thing about visual schedules is it can also show flexibility, because change can be hard to understand, but it can show, oh, where do we move something? It also can help with the understanding of time. Again, I mentioned that time's a hard concept. But for a lot of kids, it's like, I want this and I want this now, but okay, I'll get there when we get through this. It's not meant to be a contingency schedule. Like, if you do this, then this. It is meant to just kind of share what the afternoon is looking like. Things that are nice to add in your visual schedules: having colors or pictures that allow things to move. Okay. Dad's getting home late, so we had to move dinner to after bath time. So we had to change that routine. Being able to either use magnets and move a magnet, change it in a list. I like using whiteboards, so you can erase something and move it, or you can even use magnet strips on the whiteboard, so that way you can actually physically move it and they can be involved in that process. Also, being part of the process of checking something off can be really helpful, and for some kids with attention challenges, it can almost be a dopamine rush to check something off. Or we use an app called ChoiceWorks, which allows you to slide it over. They can be on phones or iPads, and that uses more pictures, so that way they're aware. You want to kind of keep, if your child can't read, don't put it in writing, because it won't mean as much to them. Another thing, verbally going over what's happening is great, but again, kind of keeping that list in their head takes working memory, which is an executive function, which might not be developed based off their age or based off where they are developmentally in executive functions. Children with ADHD or other executive functioning challenges, that might develop later in life. So hoping it not have to stay in their working memory from being told into something that is visual helps to support that skill and it not be so hard for them to hold it all in. Especially after school, their cup might not be full anymore. I'd like to think about some things as a cup, and when we're working hard throughout the day, we're filling our cup. When it gets to capacity, we're not able to perform at our best. We worked hard all day. Now we're at capacity. Our working memory might not be as strong. So they might be asking when things are happening again, even though you just told them 20 minutes ago. Keeping that there can be harder, whereas the visual schedule kind of takes it away. Working on a visual schedule, showing them, allows them to also add their feedback. What would they like into it? Or is there some certain things that they want in a schedule that you can add with them? Always giving that autonomy can really help buy-in. So it's not just something that's imposed on me all the time. Trying out your visual schedule. Like I mentioned, the other earlier in the presentation, try out the schedule at least for a week, probably 2 weeks. And you can review the parts that were easy and the parts that were harder. Then you can sometimes even talk to your child about the parts that are harder. Do you think there could be a change? Do you think maybe if coming home and starting homework's hard, maybe having some mom time or some dad time for a little bit is something we can try before homework, or taking a walk around the neighborhood together, um, helping them build that problem solving skill, but also giving them that choice to have some buy-in. Um, Once you have that data, you can also make choices about whether it's something that you want to change ongoing or just change for the day. Like I said, three main parts of after school time: snack, downtime, and homework, besides for all the other extracurriculars. Downtime can really allow the brain to reset. One thing we have to remember is downtime looks different for different kids and different, just like for you or as adults, downtime might be taking a walk, it might be taking a shower, having a cup of coffee, talking to a friend. Um, some people like to do puzzles or something mindless, games like that. Some people clean as their downtime. Finding the activity that is downtime. So, sitting and reading a book might not be downtime for a child that really is always on the go. That might be spending time on the swing set or taking a walk. Um, Somebody else might need Legos or something very constructive or something visual as part of their downtime. Kind of some categories of downtime to kind of child with your child. One is visual activities like Legos, puzzles, books. Some kids really gravitate towards those. It kind of helps tune off the world so they're able to focus and find that regulating. Sensory activities. Some kids that are really do well with slime, sand, putty, kind of that tactile input. Tactile input often releases dopamine, which can be regulating for some kids. Some kids don't want to touch it. For some, music or an audiobook under a weighted blanket helps them to tune out. Or for others, like I mentioned, it might be a walk or some level of physical activity. Downtime doesn't have to be long. And again, structuring is downtime before snack, after snack, probably before homework, but some kids really like to get homework out of the way. It's kind of figuring out the right amount too. I would say at a minimum 10 minutes, but some kids might need a little bit longer to recharge before they're ready for the next thing. Homework tips. We're going to have another presentation about that, but some things to just kind of keep in mind for homework is picking a space that's clutter-free, making sure you take breaks during homework. It doesn't have to bang it out. Maybe you want to bang it out as the adult, but sometimes homework needs to be broken down, and that actually teaches a great executive functioning skill. There's a kind of rule of thumb too of kids can really only attend for double their age in minutes. And that is kind of kids that are developing without attentional concerns. So your 5-year-old shouldn't be sitting doing something for more than 10 minutes. There typically isn't a lot of homework in kindergarten, but 6 in first grade, more than 12 minutes, things like that. We also want to keep homework feeling upbeat because it is a practice. It's not meant to be stressful. If they're stressed, our body goes into fight or flight, and that does not help us learn. If you've ever kind of felt that you can't remember something your kid told you when you were stressed, fight or flight, learning goes down. So we want to keep it something positive. When talking to your kids, at the end of the day, or even when going over what's going on in the afternoons and transitioning home, making sure that we focus on the good. A lot of times we talk about the stressful points, the meltdown that happened during homework, or the difficulty going from task to task. Psychologists often say that you need 3 to 5 positive statements for every one corrective. And that's really hard. That's because the corrective stays in our brain so much more and is so much more powerful than positive statements. So we need to really be focusing on the good because we probably are giving those correctives in the afternoon. I'm focusing on, wow, you put the backpack where it was supposed to go and walked up the stairs so nicely. That was really great. Acknowledging that they are working hard, and it's okay to be tired after school. So modeling the positive emotions and self-talk can help them to do that automatically as well. After school chats. Um, you want to hear about what your kid did at school. That's normal for a parent. A big suggestion is again, just like we talked about, how do we structure the afternoon? When is the best for your kids? A small rule of thumb is people in general do really well talking when they're actually not facing one another. So in cars or walking next to someone, when we're walking ahead, people do really well with talking. I think it kind of takes the pressure down, but there is some research that talks about that. So kind of thinking about car ride, and maybe it's not the car ride home from school, maybe it's the car ride to a siblings practice later after they decompress. When's the best time for that information? One tip is asking open-ended questions about their day. That said, being a little bit specific. What did you do in math? Or what was your favorite part of recess? Often they will say recess and gym are their favorite because they had time with friends. You can also ask them what their least favorite part of the day was. Sharing about your own day helps them to model that back. I had leftover macaroni and meatballs for lunch, and I worked on 2 different projects today that involved a lot of math. A lot of times when we talk about ourselves, children are more likely to model and share something similar to what their day is. Also, it can decrease the pressure. Oh, you're always asking questions of me versus we're both sharing about our days. You always want to be sure that you're listening actively and responding to their feelings about the day, whether they were positive or negative. A lot of times kids will bring home that negative. Remember, those negatives stick. Acknowledging those, listening to those. Maybe later they can talk about positives. I know you really want to hear the positives of the day, but validating what they're sharing with you will make them more likely to want to share more. So I'm about to stop the chat so that way we can answer any questions. But I hope you join us for our next presentation.